But I think the erasure of memory is intentional. And that's why everywhere history is being rewritten. That's why before it is rewritten to make us forget, we must connect. Yeah, that's what I did in India. I worked with the farmers to remember that 1857 revolt against the East India Company, which shut the East India Company down, was a bread revolt. You know, farmers were being killed for not paying the taxes that were killing them. And so the farmers said, we'll reclaim our bread and our freedom. And because they were being arrested and killed, when they talked, they started to give bread to each other. And that's how the movement spread. When we had to launch the movement for seed freedom, I went back to Gandhi and his spinning wheel. He said, there was an empire of cotton where we were being impoverished, our farmers were dying. What did we do? We started to spin our own cloth. And I said, growing your own seed, growing your own food today is the freedom of today. And those who say these are conspiracy, well, just look at the rules of WTO and globalized free trade. Who wrote the intellectual property agreement of WTO? Monsanto, they admitted it. Who wrote the agreement on agriculture that's destroyed all the self-reliance and food sovereignty of people? You know, everyone's talking about the Ukraine war and Russia. But the reason African countries are hungry is because their ability to produce their food was destroyed by the right to dump by Cargill. Cargill wrote the agreement on agriculture. And then the junk food industry, the Pepsis and Cokes and Nestle's, wrote the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement and created the Codex Alimentarius to shut down healthy food and pushed the food that gave us illnesses, 75% chronic diseases. This is not a conspiracy. There is evidence that the corporations wrote the rules. Then it created the billionaires. Now the billionaires rule the world. And I call them the 1%, not because they're 1%, they're just a handful. And when you ask me, you know, what's the optimism? For me, the optimism is a pathetic group of ignorant, selfish men are not more powerful than all the people who've occupied the palace of the president in Sri Lanka, the farmers who've occupied the streets of Netherlands. People have power. We've been made to think we are inert. We've been made to think nature is inert. And all it is a colonization of our mind. The minute we become free and say, we are part of nature, we are creative, and we are powerful. Powerful in a different way. Powerful in the way of Shakti. Powerful in the way of non-violent resistance, of absolutely refusing to be colonized.
म भोजपुरको पहाडको कोखमा जन्मे जहाँ हामी घाम लागेदेखि बेलुकी घाम अस्ताएसम्म सङ्घर्ष गर्थ्यौँ, खेती गर्दै र गाई बाख्रा चराउँदै। 5 सन्तानमा म जेठी छोरी भएकोले मैले घरभित्र आमालाई काम सघाउनु पर्छ भन्ने अरूको सोचाइ थियो। तर मलाई घरभित्रको काम गर्नै मन लाग्दैन थियो। बरु म घर बाहिरको काम गर्न मन पराउँथे।
र म यो भाइ बहिनीहरू भन्दा सानो उमेरदेखि नै पानी बोक्ने, मम्मुलाई सहयोग गर्ने अनि दाउरा घाँस काट्नु चाहिँ यता साइडमा यहाँ तल जान्थे।
म स्कुल जाँदै गर्दा पनि धेरै घरको काम गर्नु परेकोले म 12 वर्षको हुँदा स्कुल कम जान थाले र म दिनभरि चामल बेच्न थाले। म 28 किलोसम्म चामल बोक्थे र म दिनभरि काम गर्थे। बिहान 4 बजे घरबाट निस्केर बेलुकी 7 बजे मात्र घर फर्कन्थे। धेरैको लागि त्यस्तो जीवन गाह्रो हुन सक्छ, तर अहिले सम्झँदा त्यो मेरो लागि निकै नै राम्रो ट्रेनिङ थियो। नेपालमा गृहयुद्ध चलिरहेको थियो र हाम्रो परिवारलाई जो गर्न गाह्रो भइरहेको थियो। जब माओवादी हाम्रो गाउँमा आए, 2 छकाने आशा र केही गर्ने आशामा म माओवादीमा सामेल भएँ। त्यति बेला म सानै थिएँ। माओवादीसँग मैले 2 वर्ष जङ्गलमा बिताएँ। मैले भिडन्तमा जानु परेन, तर मैले बन्दुक चलाउन सिकेँ। मलाई खेलकुदमा बढी रहर थियो। म कराते र रनिङ राम्रो गर्थेँ। त्यसैले जब लडाइँ सकियो म एउटा सपना बोकेर घर फर्केँ।
She turned up just in a cotton t-shirt, long running pants, and carrying nothing, no water, no food, no nothing. Several hours later, she'd won this race, and that was her first ultra.
त्यो रेस टेलमा थियो र त्यति लामो म कहिले दौडेको थिइनँ। त्यति बेला पानी र असिना परेर झन गाह्रो भइरहेको थियो, तर दौडिँदै गर्दा म पहाडको बाटोमा राम्ररी दौडिन्छु भन्ने थाहा पाएँ। मेरो बाल्यकालले मलाई त्यस्तो समयको लागि तयार गरेको थियो।
The fact that girls go through such a rough life also means that they're very resilient. And someone like Mira has taken that resilience even further. She has taken her practice of running up and down to get water and kind of evolved that further to be able to run in very rough circumstances. And that is very impressive.
हाम्रो दिदीबहिनीले रनिङ तथा अन्य स्पोर्टमा धेरैभन्दा धेरै भाग लिएको हेर्न चाहन्छु। हामी महिला पनि पुरुष जतिकै समान हुन् भन्ने विश्वास गरेको छु र हामी महिलाको लागि समान अधिकारको लागि अन्तिमसम्म सङ्घर्ष गर्नेछु, चाहे त्यो खेलकुदमा होस् वा अन्य क्षेत्रमा।
Here in Nepal, there aren't many women in a prominent position that young girls can actually look up to. So for somebody like Mira to come out of nowhere and suddenly be recognized internationally for her talent, it's inspirational for them.
मेरो विश्व प्रसिद्ध रनर बन्ने सपना थियो, त्यो सपना आज पूरा हुँदैछ। जब नेपालको झन्डा गर्वको साथ फरफराउँदै म रेस अन्त्य गर्छु, त्यो मेरो लागि सबैभन्दा ठुलो गर्वको क्षण हो।
For justice in this year. We ask right now for justice at the polls. May there be no more divisions. May there be no more annihilation of people. May there be no more killing of black people.
Meet Nia Weeks and her friend Faye Matthews. They're two lawyers on a journey to detangle voting rights, past, present, and future in the South.
See you on the journey.
We're standing in front of the 16th Street Baptist Church.
Here we are biking to the polls. My mother was here on Bloody Sunday. They proceeded on this bridge. Martin Luther King Jr. born in this house.
My mother, she understood institutional building
and how it impacts everybody's life.
It's important for us to ensure that the players who are part of that system care about our issues.
We know, as attorneys doing constitutional law, when We the People was written, we wasn't people.
Black Lives Matter, nigga,
when it comes to civil rights, we've had our hands tied into the fabrics of it for hundreds of years already.
The Democratic Party has had a disconnect.
I've run into kids that say, I'm not about that life. I don't want to vote.
What led me to run for office was this aha moment.
Little kids run to me saying, you're mayor. And I say to them, you can be also.
Voting is where we get to actually speak for ourselves.
Yeah. And if our votes didn't matter, they wouldn't try to suppress us.
They wouldn't try to stop it.
They are really scared of what we can become.
The movement takes time. Their dream was for us to participate in this country, whether the country wants us here or not.
Detangling the South, coming soon.
Is generated from the cow's poop. We put it in a digester. We collect the gases that are coming out of the digestion process, run them through a generator, and create renewable electricity. We're always having to have an eye on the future, but we can also help reduce our carbon footprint, make renewable energy for our neighbors, and do it in a way that's healthy for the planet and healthy for the people.
There are secrets hidden in this forest. Trees taller than any others on Earth, older than the Roman Empire, so large that their canopies support entire ecosystems, kept secret so that they won't be destroyed.
I'm starting to realize the dilemma of making a video out here is that no image could ever possibly convey how huge these trees are.
Alright, so these trees are gigantic, which sounds like a natural strength, but it's actually been more of a fatal flaw and has kind of led to these trees' demise. In the mid-1800s, the gold rush brought hundreds of thousands of people to California. Logging accelerated rapidly, and over the next century, the majority of California's old-growth redwood forest was bought up by timber companies and harvested, largely in clear cuts and specifically targeting the largest trees. The fact that any of these trees are still standing is actually thanks to a pretty small handful of activists. In 1918, a group of wealthy donors founded the Save the Redwoods League, using their gigantic pile of cash to buy up 170,000 acres of old-growth forest and then just hold on to it and protect it. Fast forward to 1963, and the head of National Geographic thinks the redwood should be a national park. So he sends an expedition into these logging forests to find a really tall tree and make a case for protecting it. And it works. They find this 367-foot tall tree, the tallest ever recorded at the time. National Geographic describes it as the Mount Everest of all living things, and a few years later the national park is established, with this tree right in the middle. Fast forward a bit more to the 1970s, and there are plans to expand the park. The logging companies catch wind of this and start cutting down as much of the area around the park as possible. By the time the park expanded in 1978, 80% of the new land had already been logged. But the expansion still included 9,000 acres of old-growth forest tucked away in these deep canyons that timber companies couldn't get to. What no one knew at the time is that those 9,000 acres contain some of the most special trees on Earth. So there's a handful of people out here who have pretty much devoted their lives to wandering this forest, hunting for the tallest, most impressive trees. And in the early 2000s, they struck gold, discovering numerous trees here more impressive than any others on Earth. Trees that probably came within weeks of being cut down. Among them, the tallest tree on the entire planet. The location of these trees was kept secret out of concern that too many visitors would damage the ecosystem. And with miles of bushwhacking off-trail required to reach the trees, the National Park Service said it would be near impossible to find them. But a few people still wanted to try. I found this discussion thread of people trying to find one of these trees, and it really does seem impossible. But somehow, in 2010, after 2 years of searching, the first person finds it. By 2014, 8 people have found this tree, only one each year, and all of them have kept the location under wraps and stressed the importance of treading lightly, navigating the forest respectfully. But in October of 2015, all of that changes. An anonymous website leaks the location of many of these champion trees. Photos, GPS coordinates, and detailed instructions for getting there. Within a matter of months, new foot traffic has caused noticeable damage to the trees' surroundings. Bushwhacking to the trees has made trails in the previously untouched forest. Visitors standing on their bases to take photos has damaged the trees and killed the surrounding vegetation. Garbage and even human waste has been left in the area. People have gotten lost and injured trying to navigate the remote and overgrown wilderness. And eventually, this is the result. A complete closure with visitation resulting in a fine of up to $5,000 and up to 6 months of jail time. And that is why this story matters. It is maybe the best example of the danger the internet presents to the outdoors. Social media makes it so easy for a beautiful, impressive location to blow up. But when those locations are sensitive and can only handle a small amount of delicate foot traffic, there needs to be a barrier to entry, some level of research and effort to get there. I don't mind not knowing which of these is the tallest one. What makes this place special isn't standing at the base of a tree and knowing its secret. It's looking up at the canopy and knowing that it's out there somewhere, silently growing old in a world high above our own. Thanks for watching.
The government will punish anyone who exercises their right to a trial.
This is not a healthy way to administer justice.
If an individual wants to go to trial, they risk a much longer sentence.
But he was adamant that he was going to put his faith in the trials.
And I didn't see how I could lose by going to trial.
I just cried so hard. I just thought, I'm cooked.
There should be no question that the trial penalty affects everyone.
People plead guilty because if they don't, they could lose everything.
Widely seen as the godfather of artificial intelligence, has quit his job at Google, warning of the dangers of AI. Dr. Geoffrey Hinton's pioneering research on deep learning and neural networks has paved the way for current AI systems like ChatGPT. But in a lengthy interview with the New York Times, Dr. Hinton said he now regretted his work and is worried that AI technology will flood the internet with misinformation. Google responded in a statement saying, "We remain committed to a responsible approach to AI." Dr. Hinton has been telling the BBC how these systems can know so much.
The kind of intelligence we're developing is very different from the intelligence we have. We're biological systems, and these are digital systems. And the big difference is that with digital systems, you have many copies of the same set of weights, the same model of the world. And all these copies can learn separately, but share their knowledge instantly. So it's as if you had 10,000 people, and whenever one person learned something, everybody automatically knew it. And that's how these chatbots can know so much more than any one person.
Well, Dr. Hinton also told the BBC the rate of progress is worrying.
Right now, what we're seeing is things like GPT-4 eclipses a person in the amount of general knowledge it has, and eclipses them by a long way. In terms of reasoning, it's not as good, but it does already do simple reasoning. And given the rate of progress, we expect things to get better quite fast. So we need to worry about that. Right now, they're not more intelligent than us, as far as I can tell. But I think they soon may be.
Well, earlier I spoke to Junaid Mubin, author of Mathematical Intelligence. I asked what he makes of the AI warning.
I think this one is to be taken seriously because of where it's coming from. The concerns that he's raised around existential risk, I think, are to be taken seriously. And I think it's important to recognize that those risks are not premised on AI becoming conscious or gaining sentience. We're not talking about a Terminator doomsday scenario, but it's the idea that these technologies are able to amass information and process information so effectively that if you put them in the hands of bad human actors, they can wreak all kinds of havoc. And I think that is something we all need to pay attention to.
So tell us a bit more about that, because he referred, didn't he, to bad actors who would use AI for bad things. So tell us a bit more about what you think he means by that.
So I think one of the challenges with these chatbots is we don't fundamentally understand how they work. We know that they absorb large amounts of information, and then you can input a prompt, and it will give you an output. It might write an essay for you. It might generate an image or a video. And so the challenge is that as these systems become more complex, we can issue them with certain tasks. So I might ask a chatbot to go online and find the cheapest train ticket for me, and I might give it access to my bank account, and it will be able to carry out that task, and the stakes there seem fairly low. But you can imagine in a different context where the stakes are a lot higher, these systems might be weaponized to carry out a whole range of tasks, and they will execute those tasks in ways that we don't fully understand. And I think the concern that people at Jeffrey Hinton have is that there could be unintended consequences. These systems behave in ways that are very different to humans, so there's no real account for how they will go about achieving their objectives. And especially if those objectives are rooted in some kind of malicious intent. So if an authoritarian leader, for example, says to a chatbot system, help me to reassert my grip on a population, there's no real knowing how a very complex computer-based system would go about achieving that, what kinds of manipulations it might employ.
This is what Colin O'Brady had to endure as he crossed Antarctica.
Has it sunk in yet what you did?
I think it comes in waves. It's a beautiful thing to see, and it's still kind of sinking in.
I'm officially all alone out here.
He traversed the continent solo more than 900 miles. No one brought him supplies, no help from wind-driven sails. And there was no shortage of wind.
Not doing good. But trying to hold it together. Was there ever a point in the journey where you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish this?
There were several moments, but I think the most clear moment of that was the first week for me.
At first, Colin's sled, packed with food, weighed 375 pounds. He worked with sponsor Standard Process to create meals, including so-called Colin bars.
When you're burning, on average, 10,000 calories a day, you need to make sure that you're close to balancing that so you can keep putting foot after foot after foot.
After 54 days, Colin could finally see the finish, but he didn't sprint. He paused.
So to really kind of slow down and enjoy it and really kind of look around for the last time was also really beautiful.
And then he reached the end.
This was such a hard journey. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Colin went through a battery of tests to measure the journey's impact on his body. As for his mind, he'll need more time to think up his next adventure.
Music mind is actually our natural state of mind. We were all children. We played. When kids play, then there's exactly that happening that I'm talking about, the complete togetherness. When you don't think for a while, maybe just for a few minutes, well, then you're there. That's it.
They're not worried about music theory. It's just all about expression.
A lot of people moved up here. That's why Carl and Ingers are here. That's why a lot of other artists from many aspects are here. Exchange ideas, and learn from each other.
Because of Carl, because of CMS in the 70s, I wouldn't have had those experiences of what world music of jazz, Don Cherry, all of these Ornette, these groups that were mixing up languages from all over the world and collaborating with them in this harmonic way.
If I were a student, I would have loved studying under Carl.
Well, we need one another.
As a musician, you're a student till the end of your life.
So
I do the workshops because I learn something.
They pay us, but we should actually pay them too. Because I learn from each person that's there.
And each man as my friend.
Let's talk about Shireen Abu Akleh. Shireen Abu Akleh was well known and well loved. She'd been a TV correspondent for Al Jazeera and Palestine since 1997.
She was there in every town, every Palestinian town, village, alleyway, refugee camp. She wanted to do the stories that nobody else wanted to do.
We never assigned Shireen to do a story. I mean, she's just there. She shows up.
And that's what she did on the last day of her life. At 6:13 a.m., Shireen emailed the Al Jazeera office in Ramallah, saying she was headed to the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank to report on a raid by Israeli forces.
After this email, we heard the news. Actually, we heard the news circulating on social media that Shireen was killed.
Shireen had been shot in the head while wearing a helmet and bulletproof vest clearly marked with the word press. The journalists who were with Shireen said the shots were fired by Israeli soldiers. Al Jazeera Media Network put out a statement saying that Shireen Abu Akleh was deliberately targeted by Israeli forces.
We considered this something intentional because the bullet hit exactly the area under her ears where there is no cover.
The Israeli government immediately sowed doubt over who fired the bullet. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett came out with a statement saying it appears likely that armed Palestinians who were firing indiscriminately at the time were responsible, and offered up a video of Palestinian gunmen in the area. The investigative organization Bellingcat later published a more detailed analysis using other publicly available data. They worked out that Shireen was here, the Israeli army was here, and that Palestinian gunmen were also in the area, here.
So that's a further distance. It's a much more obstructed line of sight to the spot where this tragic killing took place.
Bellingcat's conclusion is that the available video evidence does not provide good grounds to doubt the accounts of the journalists on the scene. Indeed, it appears to support them. The Israeli government has now acknowledged that Shireen could have been killed by its own forces, and it's saying it's investigating. It's also suggested a joint investigation with the Palestinians, but they refused and said any Israeli involvement is just not credible.
They are the criminals, and the criminals cannot investigate themselves.
Experience very clearly demonstrates that in the cases of such killings of Palestinians, the announcement of Israel's desire or intention to investigate does not lead to accountability.
The Palestinians have launched their own investigation and say they plan to take their evidence to the International Criminal Court. The UN Security Council has also called for an immediate, thorough, transparent, and impartial investigation. It was a rare case of unanimity. The same day Shireen was killed, Israeli police entered her family home, took down a Palestinian flag, and told mourners to turn off patriotic music. And then there was what happened at the funeral. Israeli police said there was a plan made with Shireen's family to drive the coffin from the hospital to the church. Shireen's brother said there was no agreement. After people started to carry the coffin towards the hospital gates, this happened. Israeli police beat them back and threw stun grenades into the crowd.
This is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Once the coffin was in the hearse, police continued trying to remove Palestinian flags. And at one point, they smashed the back window of the hearse to get to one. Thousands of people crowded into Jerusalem's Old City as Shireen's coffin made its way to the cemetery. It turned out to be one of the biggest gathering of Palestinian mourners in years. While all of this is hurtful and shocking for so many Palestinians, it's also unsurprising.
Palestinians see everything that's just happened as the latest injustice in a long pattern of violence under Israel's occupation of Palestinian land. An occupation that's illegal under international law and enforces a system of apartheid, according to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, where Palestinians are treated like second-class citizens and where journalists are killed for trying to share the Palestinian struggle with the world.
أنا شيرين أبو عقلة.
In the cloud forests of Ecuador, there are treasures. In this misty, rugged landscape, iconic wildlife offers fabulous photographs. Ecuador has over 130 species of hummingbirds, but capturing these beautiful, fast-moving birds can be a challenge. Their wings beat as fast as 80 times per second. To freeze their flight and to reveal their exquisite colors requires flash. But how is that done? That's where we come in. At one of our locations, we start with a bare patio, with feeders swarmed by hummingbirds, sometimes resembling a hive of bees. That's where the magic begins. We start by adding our light stands, with each set offering different lighting effects. Backgrounds are critical to achieve a natural appearance. Here I'm setting up our first station. In all, we have 5 different flash setups for our 5 participants. Once we're set up, our 5 participants are ready to start photographing, rotating through each of our 5 sets, with Mary and I available to fine-tune, tweak, or help out in whatever way we can, while our participants sit back and start photographing. In 2020, we'll be offering something brand new, bat photography. We visit several different locations where we often have wonderful surprises, like this Tyra. For those who have the energy, there is a wealth of macro subjects requiring jungle walks at night, but the effort can be worth it. Our tour offers more than just hummingbirds. The beautiful and impressive torrent duck, secretive antbirds, colorful trogons, and a variety of tanagers. Sometimes we even get South America's only species of bear, the spectacled bear.
A 13-year-old American boy is being called a hero after he stopped an out-of-control school bus when the driver fainted. Dylan Reeves leapt into action as the bus veered towards oncoming traffic in the state of Michigan, saving dozens of his classmates from potential disaster. Andrew Misra has more.
It's the sort of moment any parent dreads to think of. The driver of a bus full of school children loses consciousness at the wheel, setting the vehicle on a collision course with oncoming traffic. Until, seconds later, from a few rows back, 13-year-old Dylan springs forward and intervenes, steering 65 of his panicking peers to safety, before turning his attention to the passed-out driver. Impressing his classmates and teachers.
In my 35 plus years of education, this was an extraordinary act of courage and maturity on his part. He jumped up from his seat, threw his backpack down, ran to the front of the bus, and somehow he remained calm until 2 good Samaritans came to the bus.
And there's no end to the plaudits for the 7th grade student.
A police officer called me, and my first response was, "What the heck did he do?" And they're like, no, this is a good call. I'm like, oh. He goes, "Your son's a hero."
Dylan's dad says he's a quiet kid, but his actions have made him the boy everybody's talking about in this part of Michigan. Andrew Mesra, ITV News.
Today's Flags In. We walk through the cemetery and we put a flag at each grave, ensuring that each of the heroes that are buried here are honored and respected.
Each unit is designated a section within the cemetery, and at that time we'll take our bundles of flags in our rucksacks here and we'll go out and pick a row and start placing the flags. Of course, we have a standard like we do with everything in the military, so it's 1 foot in front of the grave, place it behind it, and make it look nice and neat.
These heroes, they laid down, everybody in the cemetery, they laid down their lives or some part of their life, a sacrifice to protect us. Whether some of them were killed in action, some of them died at old age, were injured, they all served their country.
For me, what really sets in and resonates is they did not know their true future. I mean, we all have plans and aspirations and things of where we want to be, but they didn't know where they were truly going to be. And the same goes for all of us currently serving. So, to give back and just thank them for, hey, thank you for paving the way for all of us currently. I'll never get this opportunity in any other organization, so just to come out here and know that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Once I PCS and move, I'm not going to get this chance again, so definitely taking it, letting that sink in today.
This is ringing the bell. You hear it? Yeah. Really? Pass me that pipe down here.